because I guess people can be directed to the recording. And I'm not talking about anything new. If people were active on the CPE Plus game chat earlier today, I wanted to address just some changes going on with the anti-cheat and why that is.
Okay.
And mainly it has to do with the space. It's been eating up a lot of space, allowing players to be able to zoom around on the server. And how that happens is every time a player enters a new chunk, it doesn't matter which dimension you are in, but the first time that gets loaded by a player, and then we take in consideration the render distance that each player has, which is, I believe, if I remember right off the top of my head, for CPE Plus, it's 8 chunks. So it's loading, in essence, an 8-chunk radius around a player. And so when you enter a new area for the first time, all of that gets saved on the server. Even if you happen to be in it for a millisecond, speed flying through the nether. So there's two things that are going on. And one is the space being eaten up by that. The second one is the area that, the area that most players are utilizing to do this, which is the nether roof. And so if we compare file sizes for each dimension to some of the other servers on the IGN network, we look at CPE we look at like 2B, the 2B crossplay server, which is basically running the same thing that CPE Plus is. Not all the same plugins, of course, but the same backbone system, the Geyser system. We look at the different world files for that server. The overworld is setting at just about 1 gigabyte in size. The nether and the end both about somewhere, I want to say, in the 200 to 300 gigabyte range. So the bulk of the space on that server is eaten up by the overworld, which is kind of expected. We look at CPE Plus, on the other hand, and we have the complete opposite going on. The overworld itself is roughly about 170 gigabytes in size. The end is about the same, somewhere in the neighborhood of 150, 160. The nether, on the other hand, we're setting at 700 gigabytes. And that's from all of the roof travel, base hunting, because of being able to speed around on the roof, just loading lots of chunks, looking for places, going and exploring the roof, and some of the abilities that were allowed, such as entity hacks like boat fly and various things like that, were used to travel to great distances on the server via the nether. So lots of these chunks, I've accessed the back end of the server, to see if I can just eyeball and see, okay, which nether chunks actually have stuff that players are doing. Because unfortunately, CPE Plus, we're at a place where if Boss, Master Luke, had his way, we would be removing the roof. He says, get rid of that roof. I'm tired of this. This is unsustainable growth for that server and the hardware that we have. And which is why, thanks to some members of the community have helped me out, but we've recently purchased additional hard drive space for CPE Plus, just our server. It won't be shared or anything allocated to any other resources. It's just going to be CPE Plus. So we're getting another 4 terabytes of space, but we are currently running on fumes, and it's been that way for a while because of all of the chunks that get loaded. And as I was saying, looking at these files, just having them loaded, player doesn't have to do anything. The average file is about 3 gigabytes. I'm currently looking at a section of the nether that I'm going to be removing those region files, just doing 5 of these that were used just along a path loaded going out to the world border frees up almost 40 gigabytes. So I'm going to do that a couple times over to try and milk as much space that I can until we get the new drive, which will be arriving early this week, Monday, Tuesday-ish. Realistically, I wouldn't expect us to be on it until possibly Wednesday or Thursday. The thing has to be installed. The server then has to be taken offline and then transferred to the new drive and all of that business. That's in Master Luke's domain. That's out of my control. He handles all that back-end hardware stuff. So it's kind of one of these, hey, real quick, do this for me when you have time and you're in real life. So it's kind of a fire that, I'm throwing in his lap. So it's a matter of how quickly he can get to it. Not that he's going to sit on it forever, but that's why I'm saying, yeah, we'll have the drive early Monday, Tuesday-ish, but by the time everything's installed and ready to go and done on his end, I'm not looking at anything sooner than Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm going to try and milk as much space as I can. One of the side effects of this, of course, is players were noticing changes with what hacks we used to be able to use and which ones now are suddenly blocked. There's various hacks that don't work now in order for me to stop things like timer and other means of players using to transverse the nether roof very quickly. So what my goal, I guess, long story short, with the hack changes is I'm looking to find a balance between allowing E-Fly, like Elytra Fly hacks, but making it so you can't just go at warp speed up on the roof. Because like I said, Master Luke is pushing for the roof to be gone. This is a reason why a lot of servers do not allow roof access, or some of the things that I have allowed for so long, just, kind of based on a couple factors. One, player feedback, and two, that's the kind of server I enjoy. As a player, I enjoy using hacks, so I get it, and I don't want to just block everything. So I'm trying to find a good balance between allowing us to still use some of these hacks, but you can't just AFK for half a afternoon on the nether roof going all kinds of chunks. So that's kind of the current state of CPE right now. We're dealing with a space issue. We're solving that with additional hard drive space. That is not unlimited, which means we have to do something to kind of curb the exponential growth that happens on this server because of the lax hacks that are allowed that we all enjoy to use. So we may have to find some kind of middle ground where things like no fall and anti-hunger and junk don't work anymore because we've had to block some other things. Or my Elytra is all glitchy after I use it for, X amount of seconds, there's things that are going to try and block it from being auto used or used extended periods of time, and, things may be wonky here and there as I fine tune this. It's a process. Like I said, the first thing is getting us the space. The second thing is seeing if I can fine tune stuff to curb that growth, to get Master Luke off my back and justify that, hey, we can still have our roof that the players want and enjoy, and not have the server just eat up hard drives left and right. Because at the current rate, I just checked activity, and I know there's a lot of server movement and stuff going on. So as I've kind of explained, it's almost like I'm taking the global warming approach to this, where I'm using a little bit of data to extrapolate change over a large period of time. But I can say that between October and November, the server grew by 200 gigabytes. So, you could do the math. If it stays at something like that, how quickly will 4 terabytes last? So it's not something that is definitely a sustainable path that the server is on. So I have to do something to keep it, again, playable. So it isn't so much that I'm trying to block crap and make the server lame or make it harder to play. We got to find a little balance, and we're probably going to lose a few things with being able to keep the server going, so to speak, and going in a sustainable way. So I guess if there's questions about that, I can answer questions, but that's kind of the bulk of what I had to say and address about the current state of what's happening on CPE Plus.
Well, before we get to the audience questions, I would like to ask a question myself, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, you are the host.
So,
That is your right and privilege.
all right. So, from what I'm getting at so far, you're saying that the nether roof is going to stay.
That's my objective. Yes, I do not want to remove the nether roof. That is the goal here. So I am trying to find a balance between allowing some of the flying hacks that we have in order to keep the roof.
Right.
So that's where I've said, some players you may notice at the moment, I kind of have it set up where it'll allow you to fly with, use e-fly hacks. You can go at crazy speeds even, but at a certain point, it kind of grabs you and goes, hey, nope, that's enough. And the way around that is just land. You may have to funk around on the ground for a little bit, and then you can go again. I'm trying to make it work to where it's for something that's reasonable. If you're in battle with someone and you need to kind of e-fly away, you can do that. If you're cruising around your base or build or whatever, it'll work long enough for you to do that kind of stuff. And then, of course, if you're just really just cruising around and playing like that at a base and building, you're going to land and do your thing and then fly around again. So you'll probably, under those circumstances, may not even notice that there's any kind of checks on the e-fly. But at the that's kind of how it's setting right now. And as I said, it's not permanent. I'm still going to be trying to tweak things, but the priority right now is space. But yeah, I am looking at ways to kind of curb some of that so we can keep the roof. That way I can go to Master Luke and go, look, we've got the server growth under control because I've enabled, I ramped up some of the anti-cheats and I'm blocking a lot more stuff that players were doing to load chunks fast. And that'll get him kind of off our backs. So besides that, it's also, he's right. That's unsustainable growth that we are having because of that. There's just no way to keep up with that without it costing, like I said, every quarter buying another 4 terabyte hard drive.
All right. If the audience wants to ask anything, they can in the no microphone channel, and I will be reading their questions to you.
All right, sounds good.
Tom Nook asks, is this the end of CPE?
Never. There's no such thing. Like Wall Street, CPE is too big to fail.
And Xlot asks if he can go on stage because his question is complicated. All right, I will invite him to the stage. All right, Xlot, you have been invited. Please, what is your question?
Okay, so is there any possible way you could find a plugin that if the chunk has been loaded, like I talked about this a little bit yesterday, if the chunk's been loaded for less than 5 minutes, is there a way you can find a plugin that would get rid of that chunk and unload it possibly?
That is an excellent question, and I'm thankful that you brought that up because I forgot to mention that. This is a solution that has been looked into. Master Luke has looked into it as well. We have found one Spigot plugin that exists out there. It's called Chunk Kohler, I believe. However, there's a couple massive red flags with this plugin that I've noted to Master Luke and why we haven't decided to try it. The biggest one right now is it has not been updated since I believe it's March of 2020. So it's rated for working on Minecraft up to version 1.16. So right there's a big red flag. With the type of plugin that this is, I wouldn't trust it for something that isn't updated for the version of the software that it's supposed to be running with. The other red flag is looking at the comments, looking at the review comments. they're not very favorable. Lots of the plugin doesn't work right. Lots of once we get more than 10 players on, the server is really laggy. I disable the plugin, everything's fine. There's also some comments that people are saying it has corrupted their server map. So between those two things alone, I would not use it. The other thing is it's a going forward solution, so it would have no impact on any chunks already loaded. It would just be removing the ones going forward. So back to that plugin, we are in talks with a couple of our Spigot devs to see if they can make us a plugin that would do something that you were talking about, exactly working that way. Even preferably if we had the control to select like specific worlds that it would work in, because right now it's the Nether that's the issue. Like I described with those file sizes, the overworld and the end, they're nothing. There's little specks on the radar compared to how much space the Nether's taking up right now. So even if we could just use like a world control and have it just do that in the Nether, but nothing exists currently that does this plugin wise. But excellent question, and yes, that is something we've looked into, and that's the result of looking into that. Our Spigot devs, of course, are I'm not going to say who they are. They work for, like some featured servers, so kind of the stuff they do for us when they do is a little bit under the table, just because we would kind of be technically a competitor and they're under contract, so it gets kind of messy. So it's been very hit and miss once they, took the big bucks of working for a featured server as opposed to something like just exclusively IGN, which is what happens. People follow the money. So hopefully that answers your question and explains why we don't have something like that at the moment.
It does, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the answer, because I asked yesterday, like the other day, and I didn't get a response, and I was kind of wondering what was going on with that.
Yep, that is why, like I said, that sounds like a great solution. There just isn't anything publicly available that does that, so we're looking at having to have that privately made. And the folks that we have that would be capable of at least telling us if that's possible are very hit and miss at the moment, just because of their work schedules and what they do.
Yep. I was just saying I appreciate you answering the question. I'm going to exit stage now.
All right.
Thank you.
And we'll see you. Sorry about the band, by the way.
All right. So, QWERTY Badass is asking how many gigabytes is CPE, not CPE plus, CPE, the Bedrock one.
Yeah, I can't break it down per world on the fly like that, but I can tell you the overall size, and we're currently setting for CPE, this is the Nuke It one, at 777 gigabytes.
All right. And Blastov is asking why is the Nether just now becoming an issue as opposed to the last two plus years of CPE? And she's apologizing if that was covered before she joined.
No, that is a good question. It was not something that was covered. It's not so much it hasn't been an issue until now. It's just been kind of like this festering tumor that's been going on behind the scenes and has gotten to the point now where I have to request so much hard drive allocation that it's really catching the eye of Master Luke, where he's going, this is unsustainable growth. And then now he's been looking into why that's happening and discovered the Nether discrepancy and understands that I allow the roof access, and he's connecting those dots when he's comparing it to other servers and going, nope, this is why we don't, it's a server killer, dude. You got to do something. You need to get rid of that. So it's always been kind of there. And it's just because of, like I talked about before, it's doing not just because I allow the roof, but also the lax hacking ability that's been allowed, things like boat fly and different stuff. And, people were using that as they would to quickly transverse on the roof to get between various locations or to base hunt all over the place up there. So it's just something that was slowly growing that finally caught up with us and has gotten boss's attention. And, it was at the point where it's like, there's no more hard drive space for you, dude. So it was like, all right, let me buy some. And like I talked about, I had some members of the community that have helped out with that immensely. And we've gotten us some more space, but it cannot be a permanent solution to that. We've got to make some changes. And I'd love to just allow what we have, but just put a little tighter grip on the speed. That, to me, that's the issue there. It's the speed.
Right. And let's see. I think that, yeah, Exolot asked also if the roof gets patched, will E-Fly be less strict? So I imagine that means if the roof is removed.
I don't see why not. There's still some things that I'd probably keep that are not working, but like I talked about, that's what we've had. It's very strict at the moment, and I haven't been on to see exactly what it does, but I did tighten it up a little bit earlier today just because, like I said, we're running on fumes. So I'm trying to negate a lot of chunk loading and encouraging players to just kind of stay put and build up their base for a little bit and just chill. But yeah.
All right. And Samain is asking if you think that 1.18 generation will possibly cause even more problems, the server.
Is that the one that changes like something with the nether height or whatever? Or am I making that up? Does that already exist?
I think it just changes generally.
I don't know off the cuff. I haven't looked into 1.18, but I would say unless there's something very different with the generation itself, like the roof or the floor changes in height or depth, I don't know why it would be any different than any other updates that have added new biomes that just affect newly generated chunks. There may be some weird chunk borders, but I would think it would work just the same as any other updates like that added new biomes. Anything already existing would not have that.
Yeah, Blast just added that the roof and the floor limits are changing.
See, I thought I had heard something about that, and so I have no idea.
All right.
I would need to, kind of dig around on, maybe some of the development discords for some of the server software and see if that has been addressed to see what impact that has on then chunks loaded once that update is made on these kind of servers, what to expect at those boundaries. So I have no clue, actually.
Okay. And Shaq,
When is that? Does anyone know when that's supposed to be released? 1.18?
Around December.
December?
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. I'll add that to my list. Maybe excuse me, maybe we'll just go back to 1.12. That's my solution.
Well, okay. And Shaq would also like to ask a question. If you can't really speak, Shaq, right now, you can just type the question. And while he's figuring out his microphone, we can ask him. Yeah, Xlot asked, when will the new bot for the Discord have the player list command?
It already does. Here's the problem. I have no friggin' clue how to work it. Apparently, it's just simply list. And from what I can tell from the setup Wikipedia page for that feature of that plugin, it uses the Discord / command system. So apparently you're just supposed to do, the / forward / or whatever list. And then it does its thing, and it'll pull the online players as a player list command. I can't get it to work, no matter what iteration I try. Yeah, I'm answering the question.
Okay, my bad.
So it's there. I just don't know how to do it yet. I've monkeyed with the config and everything. So as soon as I figure it out, or someone else figures it out, I guess we'll know how to do it.
All right, so we have around 15 to 20 minutes left. So, Shaq, could you go ahead and ask?
Sure. My question is more about for people who enjoy, making YouTube videos and about the train exploits. Do you know how many people approximately know the server seed?
No, I don't have a figure anymore. I want to say it's probably a handful of people, and but I honestly do not know the figure, and I kind of quit trying to figure out ways to stop players from discovering the seed just because it's next to impossible.
So I have a
There's
follow-up question to that.
okay.
So if people have this seed and they know how to do stuff, I think it would be a great idea, and I was wanting to hear your input, being the server owner yourself, if we throw off such people who have ill intent. So make bases, do massive terrain terraforming, and purposely build terrain that is 500,000 K in a different direction, purposely rebuild it image by image to make griefers go there and waste their time despite it's nowhere there. And I was wondering your input and whether you think it would work and what you would think about it.
I'm sure it would work. I personally would never do that because I don't have the time for that garbage. Ain't nobody got time for that.
That's my question.
I'm sure someone does, but I sure don't.
I mean, if you want to post pictures that bad of your base, since Minecraft is just pixels and anti-aliased pixels, you can probably just use the magic wand in Photoshop and it's just going to remove the background very easily, especially because the grass is going to act like a green screen.
I think that's what a lot of people do, is they just kind of scribble out the background or do something like you said and, try and blue screen or green screen it away. Any other questions about the state of CPE?
Yeah, Tofu had one that I decided to leave for last. Let me just scroll up to it. Yeah, he asked if CPE Plus receives a prominent player base, will you rebrand the name as to not conflict with Constantium? This is due to the fact that the server is Java.
I get this question a lot, and people who have been around kind of know the history and the reasoning behind the name and why I chose that based on the scene at the time and what my original expectations for the longevity of said server were. With all that being said, would I ever change the names or rebrand them? I would honestly have to probably have a pretty big thumb pushing down on me to do so. So in other words, if there was some form of legal action that, say, Phantom from Constantium would for some reason ever pursue, at that point I might then change the name. If it ever becomes a conflict of it being called, the long form being Constantium, then it would officially get changed to just CPE, and those letters can mean any goddamn thing that I want. And I'm basing that logic off of a real life situation where for a number of years I worked for a company, and I'm not going to say the name, but it was a 3-letter acronym, and originally that 3-letter acronym stood for this certain I guess you could call it a slogan. That wasn't its intent, but it was, and it happened to be the slogan of this other company. And once that was discovered, they kept the acronym version of the name and said, well, that's just the name of our company, and we're just going to go with that, and those letters will now mean something else. And they just kind of arbitrarily came up with a different 3-word whatever to match that 3-letter acronym that was the name of their company, that they were already branded as, that their clientele already knew them as and referred to them as, and would forever call them that regardless of what new name they had. So I'm using that same logic here. If for some reason something came and pushed on me legally or what have you about Constantium being in the name, all of these servers would just simply be called CPE or CPE Plus, and that CPE could stand for whatever the hell I wanted it to be. That is probably what would realistically happen before I would change the name or rebrand anything. It's always going to be those. That's what it's going to be called.
All right, that's pretty smart.
That's just kind of my view. I mean, take it or leave it. You could disagree with, people never not calling it that again, but it will always, CPE will always be CPE, no matter what we call it or change it.
All right. And is there anything that anybody would like to add before we wrap this up?
Side note about that is I used to hate that people started calling the server CPE, by the way. I reluctantly adopted the short 3-letter acronym because it made the URL super easy. Constantium PE is pretty lame to type out when you're typing out a server address.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. As it seems there aren't any other questions, so...
Well, thank you, Kos, for hosting this podcast here kind of at the last minute. Again, I do apologize for not being able to attend yesterday's.
No problem.
It probably would have been more convenient. I was out of town, and I just kind of wanted to be able to personally speak on what's going on with CPE, with anti-cheat changes and things maybe being wonky with those aspects, and possible instability here within the next week with the server being online, either due to hard drive space running out or just being down to change it to get the new hard drive installed and stuff like that. So I do appreciate the time, and thank you again for hosting this, and for everyone that took their time out of their Sunday or Monday, depending on where you are, to give this a listen.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending, and have a lovely evening. And I would like to thank both Shaq and Jinjit for showing up. Yeah, this is the end, I suppose. Also, this is being recorded, so it's probably going to be uploaded as well. Anyways.
Excellent. Thank you all, and have a good rest of your weekend if it still exists.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.